The golden retriever, Bailey, lay on the cold clinic floor. His breath came in shallow, ragged hitches, the light in the room beginning to dim. The veterinarian stepped back, signaling the end was near. But Bailey refused to let his eyelids fall. He kept his gaze fixed on the doorway, his ears twitching at every muffled sound. Then, the heavy door swung open. Ethan rushed in. Ethan knelt and pressed his forehead against Bailey's. With a soft, peaceful sigh, Bailey's eyes finally closed. When Bailey opened his eyes again, the world was a confusing blur. He was a puppy, shivering in a cardboard box, cold and confused. Clara eventually took him home, but Mark saw him only as a nuisance. Mark dragged Bailey to the backyard and chained him to a rusted post. Days bled into months under the scorching sun and freezing rain. Bailey watched the seasons rotate through the narrow gaps in the wooden fence. He grew from a clumsy puppy into a lean, hardened dog. One humid afternoon, Mark shoved Bailey into the back of his truck. He drove for hours, far beyond the city limits, until the pavement turned to gravel. Mark stopped in the middle of a desolate field and pushed Bailey out. Mark sped away without a backward glance. Bailey stood alone, the heavy silence of the field pressing against his ears. Yet, deep within his soul, a compass began to spin. He followed the scent of memories, the smell of old leather and pine needles. His paws bled on the jagged rocks, but he did not stop. Weeks later, he crested a high hill and saw it, the farmhouse. He sprinted, his legs finding a strength he didn't know he possessed. He reached the porch and pressed his body against the screen door. He tossed a crust of bread and turned back to his dark living room. Bailey did not eat. He sat on the threshold, a silent sentinel. By dawn, Ethan opened the door. He saw a flicker of something ancient and familiar. He let the dog inside. That evening, Bailey watched Ethan staring at a photo of Hannah. Bailey knew the sadness in Ethan's heart was a wound only one person could heal. He slipped out through the cracked window at dawn, his nose catching a faint, lingering perfume on the wind. He tracked the scent through miles of suburban streets, until he reached a small cottage. He sat on the porch and barked. When the door opened, Hannah looked at the stray and gasped. She saw the tag Ethan had attached to his collar. "Bailey," she whispered, her voice trembling. She grabbed her coat and followed the dog. When they reached the farmhouse, Ethan stood in the doorway, frozen. Bailey lunged at the door, barking furiously. Hannah stepped inside, and the heavy air finally shifted. Bailey curled up at their feet, his mission complete. He had crossed the bridge of death to ensure they were no longer alone. He closed his eyes, finally at home.